Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Campus Cover. I'm your friendly neighborhood degenerate gambler, Patty Takes, alongside the mother-loving G-O-double-G, Cody Goggin. It's Friday, July 30th. Sports are coming back, and hockey's next. We have a great interview coming up with Rob Reese from NHL.com and the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast. But before we get into that, let's talk some hockey. We've had a few exhibition games so far, but then we jump right into the qualifiers. If you're listening to this on Friday, but most likely Saturday, the qualifiers start today, Saturday, July 31st. No, what's today? Today's the 31st. Never mind. August 1st. Hey, we were so close. Um, they start August 1st. And we've got a lot of great hockey coming up. Some great matchups, too. The bracket, so 24 teams have made the postseason instead of the usual 16 for just the playoffs because the regular season stopped short. So we've got a different format, and that is that the top 8 teams, 4 from each conference, will be playing each other in a little round robin to determine the top seeding for the top 4 spots going into the first round after the qualifiers, as well as the next 16 teams competing in a play-in series related to their conference. So you've got teams that really shouldn't have been in the conversation of the playoffs, kind of like the Montreal Canadiens, the Chicago Blackhawks, and maybe like the Florida Panthers and teams like that. And now they're fighting for a spot. So that puts us in a really interesting position betting-wise, but also entertainment-wise. They're going to have a lot more hockey, and it's going to mean a lot more, too. So,
yeah, it's going to be super great to get back to hockey from where we left off. We're just going straight into it, like you said. But, this format gives some of those fringe teams that might have been battling for a spot a bit of a chance, and really just gives us a completely different experience, such as 2020 has done.
And so as the qualifying rounds go, here's what we have. In the Eastern Conference, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are the 5th, or who would have been like the 5th best team points-wise in the Eastern Conference, playing against the 24th best team in the NHL, the Montreal Canadiens. You have the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers. You have the New York Islanders and the Florida Panthers, and the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Columbus Blue Jackets. That conference will be playing their games in Toronto leading up until the Stanley Cup playoff or until the Stanley Cup final. The Western Conference includes matchups like the Edmonton Oilers versus the Chicago Blackhawks, which is surely one to excite considering the Blackhawks' previous success in the playoffs. It also has the Nashville Predators against the Arizona Coyotes, the Vancouver Canucks, and the Minnesota Wild, and rounding that out with the Calgary Flames and the Winnipeg Jets. Those games will take place in Edmonton through the end of the Stanley Cup final, so the final will take place in Edmonton as well.
Yeah, and looking at the odds, obviously the teams, the first round bye, if you will, the teams playing in the round robin, that obviously they're going to have a lot shorter odds than the teams that essentially have the play-in. So you got Lightning and Bruins both topping out in the East at plus 650. You got then Vegas at 8-1, Colorado at 9-1, Philly, Washington, St. Louis, all 10-1, and the Dallas Stars at 15-1 are the lowest of the teams going for the round robin. And then you're looking at Pittsburgh is the favorite of the round robin teams at 15-1, and then Oilers 21-1, Toronto 23, Vancouver 35, Calgary 37. It looks like out of order here. Predators and Hurricanes also 35-1. Rangers 40-1. Islanders and Wild 43. Winnipeg's also 40. And then we got Columbus is 50-1. Arizona, Florida, Chicago all tied at 55-1. And Montreal at 80-1. So looking at all those, obviously the best teams are the ones that look like they're probably going to get through and do the best, but there's definitely some value across the board to be had.
Yeah, so we'll let that lead into the interview with Rob Reese from NHL.com, and then we'll circle back right after and kind of break that down. So we welcome in Rob Reese from NHL.com and the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast with Pete Jensen and Rob Reese. Thanks for joining us. Not a lot of time, but a lot to talk about really quick. So playoffs or play-in qualifiers start tomorrow. That's pretty exciting. Great to have hockey back. So what would you say, we're looking at kind of a few odds here. What can you say is probably your favorite value pick for probably a team that is not in the that's not playing for seeding, but is actually playing for a play-in spot?
Oh, so yeah, if you're talking qualifiers, I mean, and I just have to preface by saying, guys, that this is probably, hockey's unpredictable, right? But this is, with this format, it is probably the most unpredictable. But if you want value in the qualifying round, I think there's no better team to put money on than the Minnesota Wild. The reason I say that is I'm not a big Wild guy. I don't think they're going to blow you away by the way they play. They're not going to score a lot of goals. It's not going to be very pretty. But the odds, I mean, you got to think that they could actually advance against the Vancouver Canucks and then maybe make a little run beyond that. The second value play I would tee up for you guys, no one's going to like this pick, but it's the Montreal Canadiens. Like, there's literally no better value out there, no bigger money to be made than on the Habs.
Sure. I love that. As a Blackhawks fan, Cody's a Blues fan. So as the resident Blackhawks fan here, I'm so disappointed that you didn't say the Blackhawks. But I think I was actually listening to NHL Fantasy on Ice when I think you guys were having this discussion that the Blackhawks are in such a tough spot playing against Edmonton when everybody thinks of Edmonton as this like playoff failure in the past, and they are such a different team now. They actually have that depth in the third and fourth lines, and they actually have a decent goaltending pair, enough to at least propel them past a struggling team like Chicago, especially when you have McDavid and Draisaitl at the top. But are there teams that you think that a lot of people are going to hop on right now or going into tomorrow that you would say that it's crucial to avoid these teams?
I don't know. I think, and this goes back to, I guess, what we were saying about Chicago on the episode. Like, yeah, Edmonton's a bad draw for them any way you slice it and dice it. But in this format, like 5-game series are going to be played different ways. I mean, take the top 2 D pairings for the Blackhawks. Like, again, not very solid. Keith is getting up there in age now. He might have lost a step physically in his game. But in a 5-game series, like, you can play these guys 25 minutes a night. Like, Duncan Keith is still 25 years old. The same thing with lines 1 and 2 with Taves on line 1 and Kane on line 2, if you can even call it that. You can play those guys 21 minutes per night each line. So to me, it's like, I really don't think, as much as I think Edmonton could sweep this Chicago Blackhawks team, and I know you're a Blackhawks guy, so you don't want to hear that, but like, sure. You have to say, to be fair, like in a 5-game series, like there's really no telling what could happen. Corey Crawford being healthy now is a great sign for the Hawks. And hey, can you really count out a team that has gone on deep run after deep run after deep run? I don't think so. So I think this is the one format, you guys, where I'd like to be bullish. I'd like to be, contrarian here, but I really don't think that there's a team that I would count out in this format.
Sure. I have one more quick question, and I'll let Cody ask anything that he has after, but this is more of like a fill in the blank. Coming out of this long pause, the team that does blank has the best chance of just kind of taking everybody by surprise.
Ooh, yeah. See, I think, and I think in this format, you kind of, for me, I'm like, I kind of want experience, but I'll answer the question with a little bit more flair. And I'll say, if the Toronto Maple Leafs get through the Columbus Blue Jackets, they will go to the Eastern Conference Final. Why do I say that? And you can't put too much stock into one exhibition game, but look at how this team is structured now. They went out and got Kyle Clifford. They have guys on the back end now like Jake Muzzin. They have Ilya Mikheyev up front, who's a great name for any sleepers out there, or DFS if you guys play that as well. Like, that team is now more defensively sound than they have been in years past. That team is now more physical than they have been at years past. Before, they just had Nazem Kadri running around out there hoping to take on a Tom Wilson or hoping to shut down a Brad Marchand. Now you've got literally 3 or 4 different guys that can play that role, that can be that physical style. And I think that team is poised to make a little bit of a run if they can find a way to get past John Tortorella.
Love it.
Love that. And, be respectful of your time here. Last question, if you had to put your money on one team to win the cup, which direction are you going?
Tough one.
All right, well, I'll tee you guys up on this too, because I think the more opinions on this format, the better. But for me, I've been debating between 2 matchups. And I think, what I think too, I'll say this, it's probably a good time to come together after the qualifying and round robin as well, and then kind of dial in the pick. Yeah. But if you're trying to get a futures bet in now, there's 2 matches I'm looking at that I like a lot. One is Colorado versus Tampa Bay. I've never been a Tampa Bay guy ever, but I just think that there's something a little bit different about this team this year. The other matchup that I'm very much intrigued by is Vegas-Washington in a rematch of 2 seasons ago. The reason why I like Washington, as long as John Carlson's 100% healthy, this team is going to blow you out of the rink, whether Tom Wilson's banging you through the boards or Ovi's cashing in from the office. This team can flat out play. They've got Kovalchuk now, who I think is hungry to win a Stanley Cup in the National Hockey League. And then on the other side with Vegas, the only reason that I'm a little shy on Vegas now is because of their goaltending situation. I love Robin Lehner as a backup, but Marc-Andre Fleury's got to be your guy. I'm all for, the changing of the guard, if you will, but Marc-Andre Fleury, time in and time out, has made huge saves for the Pittsburgh Penguins on their deep runs. He was fantastic in 2017-18 when they advanced to the Stanley Cup final. I think he's got to be your guy. So that's my only reason why I'm fading them slightly at this point, but those are my 2 matchups. I want to hear who you guys like too.
Vegas is actually a team that I had written down because of my love of Marc-Andre Fleury, especially in the situation right now that we're in. A team that it kind of depends. You're exactly right. It's something that you really have to readdress after this qualifying round. But I kind of have this love for Calgary right now, but it is really dependent on how it's really dependent on how they do with Winnipeg.
Yeah. If they can get past Connor Hellebuck, I mean, that's going to
sure.
See, that's the thing. That's going to give them the confidence where I agree. Gaudreau's going to find a new level. Monahan's going to find a new level. But I am worried about that team, candidly. But you're going to get good value there if you put a futures on it.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, 10-1. I'll take the defending champs, the team with the most.
Yeah, of course. Of course you will.
I'll take my Blues. I'll take that.
And what's funny too. Last thing I'll say is in fairness to the Blues, why is no one talking about the Blues anymore? Did everyone forget about the Blues? The team is honestly, it's almost the exact same team as last year, but everyone's got another year of experience. Zach Sanford's the top 6 guy now. The younger guys are scoring goals now. I don't understand. And Tarasenko's fully healthy. I don't understand why no one's talking about the Blues.
Yeah, it's a Bruins and Lightning playoff is really what we're entering. So thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. I know that you didn't have a lot of time, and we really do appreciate it. Rob Reese from NHL.com and the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast.
Good to be with you guys. Take care, and let's definitely reevaluate where we're at after this crazy qualifying round.
Just want to give a big thank you to Rob for taking time to join us there on a little bit of short notice. But yeah, to really wrap things up here with with these NHL playoffs, and we'll circle back around before the once we get done with this first round. But were there any teams that really stuck out to you, Pat, or anything you wanted to hit on there?
I kind of love his pick on the Minnesota Wild. So that's a team that has been, I want to say they've been eliminated by the Blackhawks 3 out of the last 5 times that they've been to the playoffs. So without the Blackhawks likely as a roadblock, they're a better team now than they were back then. So, and a little bit faster of a team then too. So that's 43-1 odds, which I'd hop on that. I'd throw a few bucks down. We also had a good conversation. What we did not really mention was the Vancouver Canucks, who I think one of the most important pieces in this play-in especially after a 4-month pause, is that teams that are younger, I feel like we'll be able to get off to a better jump than teams that typically are older. And I think the youngest team in this bubble or in this play-in right now is the Chicago Blackhawks, have the lowest average age. But another team that you kind of love because of their veteran presence, but also their youth and speed, are the Vancouver Canucks. They're currently sitting at 35-1 odds. That is according to the Bet Rivers Illinois book, but that also kind of seems to be a consensus line for them as well.
Yeah, and we touched on the Blues in the interview, and I don't want to go back to banging the drum as a homer, but Pat had to hit the Blackhawks. So, I mean, but like we mentioned, they led the Western Conference in points. Like they're second in the NHL in points, across the season, and they're listed there 10-1 with the what was that, fifth?
Flyers and Capitals
Tied for the fifth best odds.
For the fifth, yeah.
So, I mean, you can get a team that for most of the season was the top, one of the top, if not the top team in the Western Conference at the fifth best odds in the whole dance. I don't think that's a bad thing. And, we had mentioned that it's basically the same team as last year. There's a couple pieces that aren't there, but at the same time, we also bring in Justin Falk and even like Troy Brouwer is a veteran presence that's going to be on the playoff roster.
Teams that I kind of don't love that performed very well in the regular season and have been rewarded by, they don't need to be in the qualifying round. They are in to the playoffs. They are just a part of that round robin at the top. Philly at 10-1, I would kind of stay away from that. I think that those are that's a little rich for my blood. But Colorado at 9-1, how Colorado has the fourth best odds going into the playoffs. At the beginning of the year, you probably would have thought, all right, they'll make the playoffs. They're going to be an interesting pick throughout the year. But the presence that they have and Nathan McKinnon and just how that team has performed really kind of gives you some sort of confidence. But what we really can't count out is the fact that the Lightning and Bruins are 6.5-1 odds for a reason. They are clear-cut favorites because of how good they really are. In Tampa Bay, who, as Rob kind of pointed out, you don't even have to have been a Tampa Bay guy in the past to really kind of understand that is a team that, if healthy and if clicking how they normally should and would, is easily the scariest in the league.
Yeah, for sure. So, looking at some of these, even the Avalanche 3-1 to win the West, I don't hate that either. That
Sure.
I do think that they're a really strong team, and everything I saw from this year, like if they can put it together at the right time, if they come out of the break hot, then they can certainly make a run.
Yeah, and I think a couple of the interesting questions going into this playoff, which I would like, it was awesome that we were able to talk to Rob Reese for the 5 to 10 minutes that we had. If we had an hour, though, here are some of the questions I suppose that we could have asked. But health is going to be an important factor. We're not worried about COVID right now pertaining to the bubble. Everybody seems to be testing negative, which is a positive. But on Washington, Rob Reese mentioned that John Carlson did leave if he isn't 100%, then that could change things. Carlson did leave the exhibition game for the Caps earlier in the week, and has missed practice, although Washington is saying that he is good to go for their round robin games. But in my own mind, I know that the seeding is important, but at the same time, if you're Washington and your Stanley Cup hopes really do ride on the defense at this point and heavily on John Carlson's shoulders, wouldn't you consider sitting him in games that I wouldn't say don't matter, but you can't be eliminated in the next 3 games. So in my own opinion, it's not a bad idea if he were to sit out a game or get limited ice time. And then for Carolina has a really interesting matchup with the New York Rangers and a pretty good high-powered offense, especially led by Artemi Panarin. But if Carolina's without Dougie Hamilton, which he has been deemed unfit to play for Game 1 tomorrow, that's fairly significant in a qualifying round. So if you have Carolina advancing past the Rangers, that's something that you might think about now if Dougie Hamilton is unfit to play further than Game 1.
Yeah, for sure. So any other points you wanted to hit on regarding?
No.
All right. Well, I think that about does it then. Once again, thanks to Rob Reese for coming on. And, go bet those hockey games and game start tomorrow. Sports are back, except for maybe baseball.